Hello and welcome to another episode of the Skill Point podcast, the podcast on a mission to level up the recruitment marketing industry. And it's the 20th episode today. And it's the fourth and final one of these bonus levels where you're stuck with me for 20 minutes. But this one is a little bit different. But firstly, this is the end of season one. And we're going to take a little hiatus for a couple of months while we work on some things, clean some things up, and get some more episodes recorded in the background for the bank for season two. So keep an eye out for season two. We'll do a bit of a push to promote it. But thank you so much for those that have been listening so far. I've loved the journey so far, and it's been absolutely fantastic talking to so many amazing guests and getting so much valuable insights. I feel like I've leveled up. So hopefully we're well on our way to meeting our mission to leveling you up as well, and leveling up the recruitment marketing industry by sharing skills and knowledge. So since we've launched the podcast, and that was 6 months ago, we've also created a few other things alongside it. So we've been putting out a blog series that goes along with these episodes, where we get some of the biggest sound bites from the guests and expand on them a little bit more. So if you haven't seen those, be worth checking out. There's some really good insights on there on the Search That website. And a LinkedIn newsletter that's going up from my own personal LinkedIn profile, that's been recapping some of the key points from each episode. So if you've missed any, or just want a bit of a refresher on some of those really hot topics that we discussed, then it is really worth a subscription to that. And then we've just been promoting this podcast out on social media, sharing tons of clips, insights that condense each guest's input into a easy to consume highlight reel. So that's been great. And to wrap up season one, I thought I'd give you a recap of some of the most important bits of each episode, complete with clips from our guest. So here we go. So episode one, I kicked things off with Richard Williams, co-founder on Unearthed. And we really talked about how to build a recruitment brand from the ground up.
So to answer your question, like literally what I think branding looks like, is I think starting at ground zero means your brand architecture. So every great brand that I ever saw in the world had a mission, a purpose, and a vision, right? So let's start with the purpose. Is the why are we even doing what we're doing? And it isn't about commercial gain. It's not about growth. It's what's that one thing compelling us to get out of bed every morning and do what we do. And that can be a superpower in itself. The vision is, okay, cool. We know why we're getting out of bed. The vision is, what is it we're looking to achieve? What does the world look like when we're done, right? And that's this is a strange thing to say because you're never done. So that vision should be quite lofty, and it should be something you're never going to achieve. It's that North Star that you're rowing towards. And then the mission is, how are we going to do it? What makes us different? What are the processes? What are the things that we need to put in place to achieve this purpose and this vision, right?
And then in episode two, I did a deep dive on SEO with David Ellis. And he had some fantastic advice for small companies who want to work on their SEO strategy.
It just comes down to being strategic with the keywords that you choose to target. Are you going to be able to rank on page one for tech recruitment company? Probably not, but you'll almost definitely be able to rank on page one for, if you have a specific software that you recruit for, Salesforce or whatever, or in a location, like a specific location, or just things that will the more niche you can be, the more likely you are to be able to rank. And obviously a big part of our job is to find keywords that strategically make sense for you to try and rank for as well. But broadly speaking, you want to make sure that people are actually searching for it. So there's got to be some search volume there. It can't be too competitive, and we can analyze how competitive a keyword is. And then obviously it's got to be relevant as well, because no sense in picking a keyword, getting people coming to your website if it's not relevant.
In episode 3, saw me talking about the importance of our words with recruitment copywriter Luca Rossi, who pointed out that copy is usually your first point of contact with prospective clients.
When you visit a website, you know, if you open a report, you download a report, you read an article. I mean, I'll know straight away if somebody that's an expert has written that, somebody who knows what they're doing. It's obvious to me, might not be obvious to someone else, I don't know. But of course, why wouldn't you want to have high quality writing? It's all over your brand, from, you know, your website to your marketing, your collateral, events, everything. Why wouldn't you want? That's my question. Why wouldn't you? And if it isn't to the level that it should be, then, you know, you should have some serious questions to answer, because, you know, ultimately people are going to see that and they're going to go somewhere else, because they're going to think, Jesus, these guys can't even be bothered to, you know, to write a couple of half decent articles. Why would I want to engage with them? That's how I would see it.
In my first bonus level, I shared my insights on building a successful recruitment website.
Properly map out your product offering, and start to think about how you actually affect the life of the client, in terms of copy and what you write, and how you come across with the content on the site. A lot of the time, websites we take over, they'll just be talking about what they do. And that's great. You know, of course, include that, the sector specialism, the service offering, and things like that. But you kind of want to take a step back and put your mind in that of the client. And again, like I said, you can do research and figure this stuff out, qualitative research, pick up the phone to them and call them and ask questions. But you want to get into that mindset of how your solution will impact them in their business life. And a tip we do a lot of the time is the why. So why, you keep asking why further down, and you keep breaking it down. So for example, you want this client to sign up to your website or submit a lead form. Why? Because they want to use your services. Why? Because that will make their business work better, and that will give them more opportunities, more growth. Why? Because they can't find it themselves. They're frustrated. Why? Because then that's affecting their home life and things like that. And the more granular you get down, the more that you can kind of figure out some talking points, some reasons why your website and your product offering will solve that. And then if you can talk about that, then that makes your proposition quite powerful, and it starts to convince and break down those barriers.
And then in episode 5, we taught you how to build an engaged community with the help of Hisham Azuz, and really promoting a great podcast. Really worth a listen, this one.
Again, it comes down to being really clear on the why. And that's important, because like we've said, community, people like to be part of a community that they're aligned with. So I think you've got to be clear on what is this community about and why would people join it and what the mission is behind it and these things. I think that's really important. And then it's like, you have to be really intentional. It takes a lot of work. It really does. So I think that's the thing that I'd probably leave people with, is like, it's going to be harder than you think. Like if you're going to start a Slack community, a WhatsApp group, whatever it may be, it's going to take longer than you think. You're going to have to post every day, weekly. You're going to have a real strategy with that. And yeah, that's the really hard part, I'd say. I think some of the insights that could be useful, and we've played around with this, is what's going to make your community gain more traction more quickly is having it where people already hang out. That's something that will help. So we did sort of a bunch of surveys to ask people, if our community was on this platform, what would you find easiest to use day to day? And Slack came out on top.
And then our best performing one today is the one with Rich Evans. And I took you to the next level of recruitment marketing in episode 6 with him. And this one is really worth a listen. We dig in some really deep stuff, and there was just not enough time to cover everything. So I'm in chats with Rich to bring him back on, and we might cover a little bit of mindset, as well as breaking through a few more of those elements that we just didn't get a chance to cover off.
So when we're looking at content pillars, it comes back to exactly what you said, Haydn. Like, what do you personally in the marketplace want to be known for? And banging the drum on that, probably 80% of your posts. Like, if you want to be known for one thing, get it out there, and repeat and talk about one subject. So if you're a specialist in one market, then be talking about that market from a client perspective, from a candidate perspective, about what's going on, because eventually you'll get known for it and it will start resonating with people in your audience. I think another thing is like, because you're banging the drum with the same stuff time and time again, you've got to remember that you'll get bored of your own content before anyone else will, because 9 times out of 10 they probably seen it before, or they scanned it, or they didn't really read it. So I think people are like, well, I posted kind of on that topic, but there's a lot of ways to skin the cat, isn't there? I think from a content ideation perspective, look, good recruiters should be having conversations all day still, whether it's with clients and whether it's with candidates. And I think they can forget kind of the nuggets that are in those conversations as well. So it's making sure it's top of your mind a lot of the time.
And then in episode 7, I packed the psychology of leadership with Claire Bush, who explained the parallels between manager to team, parenting your kids. Here's what she said about the psychology of employer branding.
So the words conscious parenting kind of spring to mind whenever I think about employer brand, right? As a parent, I've got a 13-year-old, and we've always kind of had that, the life lessons that we have as kids, obviously it doesn't quite apply in this world, but there's that whole element of, I know what worked for me, but I know what really didn't work for me, and I don't want to make those same mistakes for my child. And I think the world of employer branding is kind of almost in a similar sort of space. They are the conscious parents. They know and understand what it's like to work in an organization. Hopefully in a great way, they are being represented and supported and engaged with by their employer. But they're also then taking on this child of someone else's and then putting it out into the marketplace. So I feel like there is that level of knowledge and understanding to be gained. So anybody that hasn't gone out there and figured out what is employer branding, what is an employee value proposition, what are the pillars that you'd want to be able to kind of talk about in a job advert, what are the real reasons why someone would really love and thrive in that environment and that job versus what they don't get.
I gave you another bonus level as episode 8, this time about getting smart with content marketing. And here's why using keystone content will transform your strategy.
So the next one is going into working a little bit smarter. So we kind of want to look at really what I call keystone pieces of content, and only picking 1 to 2, maybe even one that you can just literally get all your content and stretch all of it from. So the one that we potentially push a lot of the time is podcasting. We personally feel like it's a great form of content because it is a high format approach. And what I mean by high format is you've got crisp audio and great video and able to bring in outside guests or run it yourself and position your founder in a great position. What this allows you to do then is stretch that into so many different forms of content, and you can really effectively repurpose the living hell out of your content to be able to get all the sound bites and the effective nuggets out of it to then post out on a regular basis. So really what you can do is then, record one episode with your founder or yourself for a podcast episode and get up to 10, even 20 pieces of content out of it that will keep you going for the month. And the activity of getting the content out of it shouldn't be too time consuming.
In episode 9, I showed you the power of reputations with some help from my old manager and mentor, Gordon Stoddart from TRN. And this is what Gordon said about why reputation is such a game changer.
I might just tell you why I got so excited about reputation back in the day.
Perfect.
It came from me, as you know, I'm not a recruiter, but it came from me from my first business, which was a 5th generation family businesses, and we were okay, we were good without being brilliant, and we started looking at ourselves and looking at the market and saying, listen, in what way can we differentiate ourselves? And a little bit like recruitment, and we were what was known as wholesale grocers. So we were food delivery world, trucks and warehouses, not very sexy, and we concluded that the most the most exciting and most rewarding journey we could go on was one where we could get a better reputation than everybody else. And there wasn't much else. And again, when it comes to recruitment, we'll talk more about recruitment and what I've observed on that. But there are 101 different ways in which you can stand out in the market. And if you can get the reputation piece right, which influences behaviors and therefore relationships and spend, then happy days.
In episode 10, I dug into one of my favorite topics, and I was joined by Chris Cranshaw, who explained how to drive value with your marketing. But why is value so important? Well, here's Chris's take.
The key thing about adding value, and if you strip back and look at actually what value means, is it's something that's going to be useful to somebody, whether that's value to yourself or whether it's value to, in the world of marketing, is your end target audiences. So I think that's the key thing, is when you hear the term producing content that's going to add value to your target audiences, is actually really doing exactly that. And it's stripping back, and first and foremost, it's actually talking to your target audiences. Be amazed the amount of, and you as an agency owner as well, you'll see other companies and what they're producing. And businesses that are just talking about themselves, what they've achieved, how great they are, what they've done. But very, very, very rarely you see businesses actually going, right, we're just going to talk purely to the people that we work with and the people we're targeting. They're not announcing that they're targeting we're only going to be talking to us this week. It's subtly done, but it's adding value to them. And it's what content and what information can you provide to your target audiences, which is that they're going to find useful. I mean, that's the key thing about defining value.
In episode 11, I talked to El Nash about how to use events to promote your recruitment company. And we covered a whole host of things, from everything from creating a solid mission for your events and then how to produce them. And Elle recommended using emails to get people excited about your event. And this is her strategy.
The kind of touch points would just be kind of emails. And it would be, just a little reminder of the takeaways, a little reminder of a little bit more information about each speaker. So it was a kind of an email journey. So, you could spotlight a speaker and give a little bit more about them. And then also, like I say, just key takeaways that they can expect from the event. And then more basic things like just the location, how to get there, stuff like that. And also having a kind of calendar invite, a diary invite, I would say is really important. So having that for people to add to their calendar as well. In the past as well, I don't know if it was with this event, but I've also done kind of like little videos from the speakers. Sometimes that's quite nice if you can send people a little video of the speaker, just sort of saying like what they're going to be talking about, how excited they are to deliver the talk, and stuff like that. And also getting people to kind of think about, if you're having a kind of panel discussion format, reminding people to kind of think about what questions they can ask and stuff like that, and just reminding people that it is going to be interactive.
That was followed by bonus level 3, where I talked about hosting a purposeful recruitment podcast. And I shared the secrets to getting the most out of your podcast by picking the best format for your goals. You can get a bit creative with your podcast for sure, but the 3 main ones are potentially running a solo podcast interview yourself, or having a co-host on there, or finally having actually guests on there in that sort of interview format. To get the most benefit out of it, I think one of the best ones you probably want to be doing is the interview one, talking to thought leaders and market leaders within the industry to get their unique take and figuring out what the best are doing. And that allows you to, piggyback off their audiences, but then also, like we touched on before, building that business development. But it's also a very personal thing, it's whatever you feel like you prefer to do. If you can go like the solo or the co-host, that's great, because then that's going to really propel your own personal brand. But you're going to want to have the knowledge beforehand and be able to have something to talk about and show up every day. So that can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. Whereas when you have a guest, takes a little bit of the pressure off you with that sort of interview process, and you can get some really good insights that obviously you don't know about. After that, we came back with a fantastic episode about social selling with Jamie Rose. And he shared the importance of using pain points in social sales in episode 13. Here's what he said.
That we've got our specialism, we've got the person, and we don't really know what's going on, then I think that there's definitely a problem there. Because but what I would say is I don't think it's so much about the pain point. I think it's about the emotion with the pain point. And
Sure.
that's what I always encourage people to explore. You know, if someone said to me, oh, you know, I don't know, your tire's flat. And I'd say, okay, but they hadn't found out whether I even use the car. It's not really a pain point because I know it's flat, but it's not a drama because I'm not using it. You know, if, you know, and that's where the difference between a pain point and an emotion is, you know, an emotion, we're tapping into how someone's feeling because it's a relevant pain point. And that's how we identify how meaningful it is to them. And that's, for me, that's the basis of social selling, is understanding pain has emotion and we solve emotions. So I would definitely explore how people feel when they are going through interview processes. How are people feeling when they are, you know, thinking about applying for jobs? That, for me, that's the interesting part.
And then in episode 14, I sat down with Claire Stapley to talk about personal branding and marketing strategies. And Claire explained why it's important to invest in your marketing from day one as a recruiter.
Again, it's the thing that I said earlier on, when you've got someone who is, wow, they don't really want to change things, which I do understand, because like, look, the first year or 2 years of your recruitment career, it's bloody hard. And once you've mastered the basics and you've got a client base, then you've got someone from marketing being like, I think you should do personal branding, or why don't you help us run an event or a blog series? It's kind of like, mate, I've been working 12-hour days for the last 2 years. Can I just bask in this commission and enjoy myself a bit before I start doing something else? But then I think you can fall into the trap of complacency, and then people hit this ceiling where they don't know where to go next. Or, for example, we're in a really tough situation in the market. A lot of recruiters with brands and networks that aren't that strong because they've not invested in their marketing are now really struggling. And the ones that have been focusing on it since day one, like I did an event with a client, when was it? Last week. And you could tell that he'd been working on his marketing up until that point, because the turnout was incredible. And he was so open, you know, the suggestions that we made for the follow-ups afterwards, he went and did everything. He's now won business off of the back of it. And it's just like, having that mindset from day one, it pays dividends in times like this when the market is not that great. And I don't think it's going to change for a good few months now.
In episode 15 was a conversation with Matt Comer, who explained how to measure ROI in recruitment marketing and talked about recruitment websites in more detail. And here are his insights on ROI.
You want to know what the ROI is that you're retaining on, whether it's views, eyes on, that type of stuff, whether it's revenue at the end of it. I think you've got to always start with kind of the goal that you're looking at. Then you've got to benchmark where you are right now against that. So you kind of know where you want to be, and then you know where you are today. I think once you kind of know those two things and you're really comfortable with whatever the metric is that you're going to try and measure, it's got to be consistent metrics as well. Then I think that's the place where you've got to start. Everything then in between that is the stuff around which tool are we going to use to measure the individual performance, right? So most people would look to something like Google Analytics. Obviously, there's this update into GA4 now. GA4 is a very different experience in Universal Analytics. So, you know, people are going to have to get acquainted with that and will do over time.
After that, we set about exploring creativity in recruitment marketing with Jess Cook. She joined us for episode 16, where she shared her advice for new marketers. And this is what she said.
Understand how the idea that you want to execute that you think is really interesting and cool would tie back to what the business is trying to achieve this quarter, this year. That was something that was completely lost on me as an advertising creative, because, you know, in advertising, like the coolest idea wins, the most breakthrough idea wins. You know, whether it really ties back to the goal entirely or not. And you're not the person coming up with the goal or responsible for the goal, right? So when I came to SaaS and I came to content marketing, that line of thinking was very new to me. And so I would just say, you know, like, watch others, how they do that. Try to understand where they get their inputs from to kind of know, like, what are the goals and like, how would I use content to help achieve that, right? Like, just learn from others how they do it and really get into the zone of practicing that.
In episode 17, we shared insights for marketing managers in recruitment from Jade Brahaze, who said, advice for recruitment managers is this.
You've got to have the dedication to not just want to educate others around you, but also keep educating yourself. Marketing is fast paced as it is. So alongside your personal development, that kind of development along with digital transformation, Metaverse 4.0, and any other tool that is coming up daily, I think you've just got to have that momentum to stay behind. And I think when you come across people that are wanting to be on that journey with you, or saying, actually, just when you get some resistance, I guess it's about powering through that and saying, you know what, I'm just going to keep going. I'm on this plan, I'm on this path. And as with marketing, your path may shape slightly, but your end goal, if that's to be sat in the boardroom and talking with other senior stakeholders within the business, then actually if you're really trying for that and it's not happening, then maybe the stakeholder team that you're trying to penetrate isn't where you need to be. Marketing is a hard enough job. If you're getting a seat on that table and still nobody has a buy-in for marketing, then I would probably suggest that it's about time you take yourself and you go to a business that is ready to listen to marketing. They may not understand it, but they're ready to listen and go on that journey with you. And I think just keep pushing forwards, keep educating yourself, and trying to educate, not patronize, but educate the people around you as to why marketing and brand is important.
In episode 18, we looked and got a more granular approach to how to really level up a recruitment podcast. Robert Hanna is a fantastic guest, and one that is definitely worth a listen if podcasting is on your radar. And he explained the importance of getting feedback from your audience and shared his great tips on doing it.
You can do pollings, you can do giveaways, you can do competitions just to incentivize them to give you feedback. Yeah, I mean, we've evolved as a journey. I talk a lot about TOI, which if you're thinking of starting a podcast, think about your topic of influence. So what do I mean by that? Is if there's podcasts aren't new anymore. Their podcasts exist. I do also think podcasts are still very, very early. You just look at the number of YouTube channels that are out there versus when it first started to where it is now in terms of the millions that exist. So podcasts, it's still early, but it's not as novel as it once was. So you really need to think about what is the pain point your particular show is going to be serving. So having a topic of influence for us, for example, is careers and legal careers. That topic of influence should be 1 or 2 words. So for example, how to get a job as a lawyer or how to qualify as a lawyer. Our content should be geared towards that legal careers in terms of the types of things that we're putting out, or what are the latest trends in the legal industry, or what are the top 5 laws related to corporate law. All of that stuff that people might be putting into Google that are looking for that sort of content, that would all come under our topic of influence of sort of legal careers. And so we're really intentional now of ultimately doubling down on that topic of influence, but sometimes it may take a bit of time to figure that out. But when you're thinking about a strategic way to stand out, the better you nail down what that topic of influence is, the better you can create your content, the better you'll find your tribe, and you'll get much better feedback and a much more engaged audience, community, and all of the good stuff that comes from it.
And then our 19th episode was with Justin Rowe, a LinkedIn ad specialist. And he explained why LinkedIn is probably the best place to run your ads.
One of the biggest things is, and I keep saying it, the mindset that people log on to LinkedIn with is completely different than other social platforms. People log on to Facebook usually to kill time, to catch up, to see what friends are doing, to be entertained. The same with Instagram, it's discovery, it's entertainment. TikTok is entertainment, some education, and that's shifting. YouTube, that mentality is kind of similar. People are logging onto YouTube and consuming that usually with a I want to learn, I want to understand kind of mentality. That's pretty powerful. But then LinkedIn to me is still on top of that. People are literally logging onto LinkedIn, and it's the only platform they do this with the actual intent of being influenced on B2B buying decisions. Founders, owners, C-suite executives are logging in and they want to see what tech other people are using, what strategies other people are using, what partners people are recommending. They're looking for information that they can piece together to improve their business. And that really doesn't happen on any other platform. So running ads on a platform like that to people in that mindset is really powerful.
So that's it. Those are some recaps from our first season. I always love this little tweet, or maybe it's an X now, from the rebrand, from a guy called Jack Butcher on Twitter/X. And he said, 90% of podcasters don't get past episode 3. That's 1.8 million who quit. Of the 200,000 left, 90% will quit after 20 episodes. That's another 180,000 gone. So to be in the top 1% of podcasts in the world, you only need to publish 21 episodes. So when season 2 comes around, watch out. I'm going to be in the top 1% of podcasts in the industry. Now, those numbers are probably a little bit different now with the rise of a lot of people doing podcasts and doing them successfully. But it's really interesting stat, and something that we've been working towards and excited to break internally. So I really hope you enjoyed the first season of the Skill Point podcast. I absolutely loved it. It's been a huge learning experience, and it's been great to practice what we preach as podcast producers for other agencies. And we've got some really exciting guests lined up for season 2, and we'll be sharing some news about who's going to be joining us and the content we'll be covering. But in the meantime, if you feel like you want any topics covered that you don't feel like were covered over season 1, or you want us to dig into something a bit more deeper, or we'll find a guest that isn't a complete expert in that, then please just reach out on LinkedIn to me. I'm at Haydn Morgans, easy to find, pretty unique name. And just drop me a DM or drop a comment on one of our posts, and we'll absolutely cover that. So any feedback is well appreciated. And if you've really enjoyed season 1, then please do give us a subscribe, give us a review, and all that sort of stuff, and give us the newsletter a follow. That would be really appreciated. But thank you for your time, and thank you for joining me on the journey. I really appreciate it, and I will see you in season 2. Until then, thank you for listening.